Hello again and welcome back. My name is Mark.
And I'm Vangelis, and this is the Game Court.
Okay, a special edition of the Game Court. We've been brought in as a couple of mathematicians because today's theme is Reiner Knizia games, who I believe is a published mathematician, I hear.
He did research in analysis, and as a preparation for this video, we are here to teach you about his research, and it's about a special type of integral calculations.
Okay, right.
We also have something else in common with Reiner, and that is we love playing games by Reiner.
Good. How many of the 700 would you say you've played?
Well, I would say about 1 or 2%.
Okay, nice. We're going to categorize them by mechanism?
That's right, yeah, we said we want to speak to you because there are so many. We'll take a few from each category and discuss those.
Should we start with auction games?
Okay.
What about Ra as a start? Because it is known as one of his classic games.
Most favorite, I think most popular auction game. Lots of people's favorite auction game, I guess. Ra has, the interesting thing is that for me is the auctions. The way they work, right? So you only get one bid, and so you need to carefully think like how much you want to bid, right? Considering the other things. But the key thing that makes Ra interesting is that you are tempted to call Ra when it's your turn, right? Because if you call Ra, you will be the last person to bid, and that gives you full information, and then you know how much like you can bid to win the bid if you're really interested. That's what I really like about this game, and I think in terms of his auction games, Ra is my favorite.
Good. Yeah, I very much like it. I like the fact that you only get 3 different values that you can bid, so actually you can be stuck with very low values, but that's quite good. You can call Ra early when there's not much on the auction block to see if somebody will waste one of their high bidding chips or leave you with a cheap auction. So that's very good as well.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, the strategy changes depending on what kind of money you've got.
Just at a wider level, it's a typical Knizia game in that the rules are quite simple to explain. You can say to people on your go, you can call an auction, or you can pull something out of the bag and move on to the next player. It's really simple to explain. It almost takes longer to explain how the scoring works than it does to explain the rest of the game.
Yeah.
The rules are really simple, so you can explain it very quickly. The game lasts 60 minutes. Maybe 90 if you play slow. So it's a very quick game. I really like Ra.
Okay, yeah, so what else we've got in the list? We have another recently published game is Amun-Re. The same thing as Ra in Egypt, but there you play the role of an Egyptian developer building pyramids, and there you bid for the land. It's a different type of auction where you have a set amount of money you can bid each time. You can get outbid, but the interesting thing about that type of auction is that if you are outbid, then you are not allowed to bid in the same area again. You have to move somewhere else. So again, you have to think carefully if you really want one plot of land. How much should you bid? Because you don't want to bid, of course, too much, but then you don't want to bid too little and get outbid, and then you have to move to different place. So it has a lot other interesting things. Is that the locations matter, as in real estate, as always. Location is important, right? You've got these objectives where you want to have certain. You want to have plots of land in certain parts of the map.
Yes, I've not played Amun-Re very much. One of the things that it stands out to me really is I quite like thematically halfway through the game, everything gets wiped away apart from the pyramids. Are they monuments, pyramids?
Yeah.
Apart from the pyramids, everything gets wiped away. I don't think we'll talk very much about theme in this video, perhaps. One of the criticisms sometimes levelled at the Knizia games is that the theme is quite pasted on or an afterthought. But for me, that was quite, I quite like that thematically, the every trace getting wiped away apart from the pyramids and then building up again from there. It gave quite a nice flow to the game, I thought.
Yeah, actually, good thing that you mentioned that. That's one of my favorite common mechanisms that Reiner uses, which is the reset, what I call a reset. So you can find this also when we talk later in Blue Lagoon, where the board resets and then you start over again.
We're going to go on to my favourite auction game now, which I think I prefer to Ra. Very different auction game, but high society. Just a few cards, quite limited bidding, and just a couple of types of auction, really. An auction where you're bidding for something that you want, where you start to commit your currency, and then the winner, you can go round and round, and the winner of that auction gets the good thing, the good card. Or you have these bad cards, which is almost a complete reversal of that auction then, and the first person who passes gets to keep their money, but also has to have the bad card, and everybody else who was in the auction loses the money that they've bid. Just very clever in terms of the currency management. You have a set hand of currency cards, and so if you bid one of those big currency cards, and win an auction with that, that's gone. But if you bid too many of your small currency cards and win cheap auctions, you haven't got the flexibility left to bid in the other auctions. Very tiny box, which is another thing that I like. The latest version I think is beautiful.
Thanks for mentioning that, Mark. Actually, I think High Society is the Reiner's game with the most twists, or I would say the most innovative type of game, right? So you've got the mechanism that when you put money on the table, then you can't take money back and then change. You don't get like change, right? So you have to always add from the cards that you have. So that's like one twist. Then you have the other twist that you mentioned, that you have the bad cards. So you are paying money not to get the card. And you have another of my favorite mechanisms, which is the auto lose mechanism, where you don't want to spend all the most money, right? So you have to keep in mind counting how much money everyone else is spending. So you don't want to spend spend more. Yeah, nice game. So actually another thing I like about that game, which is common with Ra as well, which we didn't mention, is that you don't know when the game will end.
Absolutely. Again, a really quick game to explain. So great for introducing new players too. Except that there'll always be somebody, when you introduce new people to it, who forgets that the person who spent the most money is actually out of the game. There'll be somebody at the end of the game who's collected loads of points, really happy, and then realises they've spent way more than everybody else and is actually out of the running, which is fun as well.
Yeah. Another auction, so I guess Reiner is the king of auction games, is one that has been published in many different names, but the latest title is Nightmare Productions, which is interesting. Again, another interesting twist in auctions.
So this is a closed economy game, isn't it? The money that's in the game at the beginning remains in the game. Thematically, you're building up a film with a director. I think they all share that. It was Dream Factory. I've got one called Hollywood Blockbuster. The latest one is just about horror films, I think. But you're auctioning, you're bidding on a good director or various stars for your films and effects and things. But it's all a closed economy. The money that you spend gets shared out to the other players. So the more auctions you don't win, the more you start to collect money in to be able to bid higher in future auctions.
Exactly, and that's what makes the game interesting, in that if there are, for example, it's a 4-player game, then bidding 15 or bidding 16 doesn't really have any impact to your opponents, because they will still get the same amount of money when the money is shared. But then bidding 16 leaves one money behind for you to get later, because you are likely not to win the next auction since you spend your money. And also the theme, I think the Nightmare Productions theme fits this game very well.
The next one we're going to talk about, maybe bundle a couple of games here because they share a similar mechanism. Taj Mahal is one of my top 10 games generally, but that's got a sort of limited auction. You use your cards to bid, but once you've started bidding in a certain suit or a certain colour, then that's it. You're committed to that currency for your bids. That you see the same sort of thing happening in Palazzo, which is not nearly such a popular game, but has that similar sort of auction bid. And the same thing also happens in a little card game of Knizia's called Karate Tomate. So these all share the same mechanism. But I really like the idea that you start in these auctions bidding in a certain currency, and then when you see other people bidding, all of a sudden you think, I really shouldn't have been in this auction. I should have not got in this auction from the beginning. There's a poker-like feel where you feel at some point you're playing in hands and you think, yeah, I shouldn't really have. I've just wasted time here. I shouldn't have been in this. I should have been sitting out and just collecting a few more cards. Taj Mahal's got a bit more going on with the board and everything. Karate Tomate is just the card playing bit. And Palazzo has similar card bidding in the auction where you stick to a currency, but with slightly different game built around it. But I think that's a very Knizia thing as well, to take something and then continue working on it, and all of a sudden another game will pop up that's got similar mechanisms or a similar theme to it. Have you played Taj Mahal?
No, I haven't, but I would like to. Okay, so in closing, we've got the last game we want to talk about is modern art. Beautiful art, right? So
yeah, beautiful art, which I think detracts a little bit from the game. When it first came out, it had very awful generic art, and that really spoke to me more with the theme of the game. The idea of the game is it's a whole bundle of auctions, but part of the idea of the theme is that these paintings that you're auctioning off are only worth as much as the amount of paintings that go on display. So the more popular an artist is, doesn't matter what the art is like, the more that painting is worth. So it made, to me, thematically, it made sense just having some rubbish artworks, but as long as you were displaying them in your gallery, that made them more valuable, and so they were worth more. Now, it has got much better art, and this one's got a little wooden gavel and all the bits and pieces. Actually, the really old Mayfair version that had rubbish art, I thought was quite charming.
okay. Well, they did go. These are from real artists. Right?
Yeah, they're very nice.
Yeah, so they're very nice.
I think Brazilian. Are they all Brazilian artists? I have a feeling they might be. But there's so many versions of this reskinned. Some of it with really missing the point on that it's called modern art, and having Van Gogh and all sorts of famous artists in it.
Oh yeah. That's right. Yeah, so they have. There is information in the back of the rule book about each artist, and their art here. So that's very neat. Appreciated, I would say, from the publisher doing that.
I'm going to apologise to people who are watching the video that are triggered by the way I keep my games. This is how I keep my games, and I know there's going to be people watching the video who are going to be concerned by my lack of putting things neatly in a box. But if we open any more boxes, you'll see there'll be loads of stuff chucked in as well. Sorry, that's a public service apology.
Yeah, so one interesting thing about modern art is an artist who keeps getting better and better. So if an artist scores in the first round, then it's either 10, 20 or 30 money each piece of art, right? But then this artist potentially in the second round could be worth more because the price is cumulative. But you only get that price if that artist scores. So when you start investing in an artist, so you can see that if an artist has a potential, let's say you're in the third round, so you can see like how much potential that artist could have, and you could try and bid more if you think that that artist could be scored that round. That makes interesting decision, I would say.
Sure. The economy, it's not a completely enclosed economy like Nightmare Productions, but it shares a little bit in terms of the money flowing between players. I don't know how you feel. I think sometimes the game, if you introduce it to somebody new and they don't really realise how much a penny's worth, all of a sudden they can spew a load of money out in one direction, and all of a sudden the game has sort of tilted one way. But yeah, very good game with loads of auctions as well, loads of different types of auctions, closed fist auctions, once around auctions, traditional auctions.
But yeah, that's what actually is another thing that makes the game desirable, right? That you can have all these different auctions, so you can play like as you like. Especially the double cards, the one that allows you to play a second card, because then that can allow you to finish the game, or like can allow you to put an artist ahead of the other artists.
Okay, let's move on to a different mechanism. We're going to talk about tile laying games, and I guess we should start straight away with Tigris and Euphrates. It's rightly regarded as a classic. It's been printed several times. I think it's currently out of print, at least in this country, but due to have another version soon. We could probably talk about Yellow and Yangtze at the same time. They're almost the same game. Yellow and Yangtze uses hexes, is a bit more forgiving, but Tigris and Euphrates, for me, is the better game. Mm-hmm. It's a bit, some people find it a bit nastier, or find that there's a little bit too much luck of the draw in the tiles, which I'd argue against. I think there's a lot of hand management in terms of your tiles. You're laying your tiles out in the between the two rivers to form settlements. But the thing I really like about it is that the settlements don't really belong to you. You put your leaders in various places, but you can share a settlement with 2 or 3 leaders, or you can move your leader from one settlement to another. In fact, the way to do well at the game, I think, is not to get invested in one growing civilization and think, well, that one is mine, I own this, and I'll fight anybody who comes in here. Sometimes, you have to take a few losses, but in order to build up somewhere else.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, Mark, that you mentioned it. Yeah, I also agree, like Tigris and Euphrates is probably better than Yellow and Yaxi, because the squares, you only have 4 adjacencies. And that makes it more tricky, because one thing that is in this game is these disaster tiles. And you can use those effectively, like you can block sometimes your opponent. And if you block a square, then the opponent has to go like around if they want to move on, like from attack you, they have to place more tiles to go around when it's a square than if it's a hexagon, is it? Or is it?
Yeah,
probably it's a hexagon.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the interesting thing. I agree with Mark that you don't want to put all your leaders in one settlement, because then you just have to add the tiles that you have, and you get points only for the tiles that you have in your hand. While if you spread out your leaders to different kingdoms, then you get to benefit sometimes from your opponent's placements as well, and that's the strategy of the game. But the thing I find the most interesting in this game is the scoring, that you've got the 4 different colors, but then your score is the lowest of the 4 colors, which is common with another game that we'll talk about later.
I had I think the latest version was made by Fantasy Flight, and might be a good time to talk about expansions, because one thing Knizia isn't really known for is expansions. A lot of his games, even classics, just have no expansions. He's not known for very often producing expansions. The copy I had came with, as well as the temples that are part of the main game that are very important, as you say, pumping out points, there were some other monuments that you could build and a ziggurat that you could build. Have you ever played with the expansions?
No, I haven't played that.
I've never taken them out of the box either. It just feels like, well, I've no need to play with them. I'm not bored. There's no variability really in Tigris and Euphrates, but every time the game is totally different because of the players and what they do. I've never really wanted to play with those. They're only little promo type expansions, but I think in general, Knizia doesn't produce a lot in the way of expansions, and that probably suits the way I feel about games. If I really like a game, do I want an expansion for it? I'll probably spend that money on a different game rather than investing more into it. Although there are a few exceptions to that. The Game Court have got a brilliant video about expansions. Have you seen that? It's worth a look. It's really good.
Okay.
Yeah. My City. Should we go on to My City next? Which is a legacy game. You're going to play through the box once, because you're going to be putting stickers on the map and introducing rules as you go through. I'll try not to spoil any of it. But then once you're done, you end up with a permanent version of the game that'll be unique to you, that you can use going forwards. I played it through with my family, so we played it through as all 4 of us played it through. Really enjoyed it. Each game is quite short. We ended up playing sort of 2 or 3 games in each go. Yeah, really nice. A little bit multiplayer solitaire. You're flipping over a card, and that gives you different polyomino or different shape to put onto your own board and build your own little area up. Yeah, really liked it. Didn't keep it after we'd played it all through, but felt that we'd done it. There's a new version out called My Island.
Oh yes.
Now I think, isn't there? Which I haven't tried, but yeah, My City we really liked.
Yeah, it was a nice and relaxing game, and short. It doesn't have much of a story as other legacy games do, but the quickness of it, I think, is what makes the game appealing in my point of view. And the interesting twist about this game is that you've got these polyominoes, and of course you know from Tetris, like you've got these different shapes that you can put, and you think you can manage it, but the board has so many interesting features, right? So you've got the river, and it's placed in such a way that it's dividing your your board into two. So you have to work around that river. Then you have the trees, and you don't want to cover trees.
I thought it was paced quite well. I didn't have the feeling that, you know, something was changing each time, but it wasn't changing massively. You didn't have to spend ages in between the different games refreshing rules or changing rules. It changed, which was good. I think it was just balanced very well in terms of having changes, but not too many changes.
Next in our list is Ingenious, which has some similarities with Tigris and Euphrates in terms of the scoring.
Wasn't it?
That's right. So the game plays completely different. So we've got these double hexagons that you place on a common board. Again, you're getting points by matching so the hexagons have one or two different shapes on them. So you're getting points by matching the shapes. So that has also similarities with another game where you play these double hexagons, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, coming to Ingenious, yeah, so that's like an abstract game. I think that's also like a quick game that is nice and relaxing to play, I find.
Yes, yeah. Not many Knizia games, just thinking about the games that are on our list, that don't have any theme. I talked before that they're criticised sometimes for having a very pasted on theme, but this one has no theme at all. It's just shapes and colours. And the mechanism it shares is with Tigris and Euphrates, isn't it? That your lowest score is the one that sets your level for the game. I really like it. It's fairly underappreciated, certainly in the UK. If you're in the UK and you want a copy of Ingenious, and you just need to walk to your nearest charity shop and there'll be a copy there on the shelves. They're easy to pick up. I don't know why. I really think it's good.
I think it's good. Another clever thing in Genius is that you've got probably 6 different colors.
Yep.
Since it's a hexagon board. So you've got the 6 different colors that you progress, and there is a maximum point value for each color. But once you reach that maximum point value, then you get to play another turn. Another game we said has similarities with Ingenious is Witchstone, and that's in the way that the tiles are placed. Which again, you've got these double hexagons, which are, in this case, you've got different shapes, and this gives you the different actions that you place, that you can do on the common board, essentially. The thing I like about this game is that you power up your actions as you progress. So you start with almost no powered up actions, but then as you place more tiles, then you can invest on a certain action. Then later in the game, you make like more powerful moves for that particular action.
Is this a co-design, or am I thinking of a different game?
Yes, it's a co-design.
Which is very unusual for a Knizia game. I think
yes,
there are very
by
few that are
Martino
co-designs.
Chiera.
Okay, nice. I've not played this one, so I'm keen to give it a go. So the next one on our list is Blue Lagoon, I think.
Here it is.
Okay, which is, again, a fairly recent one. Shares a little bit of its mechanisms with Amun-Re in terms of the board getting wiped out halfway through, so it has that going on. It's also quite similar to Through the Desert, which is a tile-laying game that we've not mentioned so far, but in terms of making trails across the board. Another one of those games where you can explain really quickly to a player what they do on their go, and then the scoring is much more explanation. So the scoring is a little bit more complicated. The actual gameplay just flows really nicely. You're laying your tiles across the board. Quite a nice theme, some beautiful art in this edition. Just a really nice game in terms of its flow across, I think.
I love the mechanism of placing your hats, right? So creating an interesting decision, like where should I place my hats? Do you want to spread out? But then that might not give you a lot of possibilities for scoring because you want to have majorities in certain islands, or are you going for like the long chain, right? So depending on what scoring opportunities you are looking for, right? So you want to place your hats appropriately.
Because the huts, they're the thing that isn't going to get wiped out. So for the second phase of the game, they're going to be your starting position. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a decision to make of, well, is this, where do I want those huts to be? Not just in terms of scoring this phase, but how is it going to impact the whole of the second phase? Because it's going to start, the game hasn't really got variability in terms of its setup and stuff, but every game will be different because the second phase, your huts will be in a different position.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I mentioned briefly Through the Desert there. I suppose I should say it is sort of one of the classics. I think there's a classic Reiner Knizia tile laying trilogy that's probably up to about 5 or 6 games actually now. Through the Desert has beautiful camels. It's just been on Kickstarter again, and there's another lovely edition out. But that same sort of thing of laying trails across the desert. In this case, scoring is a little bit simpler, but still more complicated than the actual rules of the game. The rules of the game are just very simple in terms of what you're doing, which is a hallmark of some of Knizia's best games, really, that you can explain them so quickly, and the flow is just so fast around the table because what you're doing on your go is so simple. Through the Desert is a lovely game. The next one that I brought along was Rhinelander. This is my edition, which is in a huge box, could probably be in something much smaller. The game I'd compare it to most, I suppose, is Acquire. I don't know how available this game is, but if you've played Acquire, it's got a similar sort of feel to it. So you're laying your knights out around the Rhine and trying to build up some bigger and bigger fiefdoms, because your dukes on the board then will own those fiefdoms. And again, you don't want to get too invested in a particular fiefdom because you score points when you lose that fiefdom. You score points for it at the end of the game, but losing it through the game is not necessarily a bad thing. You score points for it, and you can invest that duke somewhere else. It's a really nice game. Again, just really simple to explain. Lovely flow around the table, worth looking out for. Rhinelander. This is Babylonia. Another fairly new game, but with a heritage that harks back to Tigris and Euphrates, Through the Desert. It gets talked about quite a bit as a sort of mashup between those two. I think it has a feel all of its own. Very nice. Again, putting out tiles, in these case, wooden discs, similar to Tigris and Euphrates. You have different types, and only some of them can go on the rivers. Again, really simple as to what you can do on your go. Scoring takes a little bit more to explain, but the flow around the table is just lovely. And some ziggurats there that score you points, give you special abilities. But again, one of the things that I like about this game, and most of the games we've talked about today, is no specific player powers, no asymmetry to what you can do different to anybody else. Put the board out, set the game up quickly, and off you go. Okay, the next category that we've chosen to talk about is Push Your Luck. That's a mechanism that comes up in several Knizia games. I'm not sure we've got a classic that we'd start with here. So let's talk about a more recent one compared to some of the ones we're going to talk about today. Llama, which is a card game where it gets compared sometimes to Uno, because it is just so simple to play. When you talk to people about what they need to do on their go, the decisions are just very simple. But the interesting thing is knowing when to pull out of that particular round, because at the moment you pull out, you limit the negative points that you're going to score in that round. So it's all about knowing when to quit, when to fold.
Yeah, that's right. So that's a game that came in many different editions, right? So new editions keep coming of this game. So yeah, I agree. Like the play is very automatic, let's say, right? So that's not really the interesting thing. But yeah, there are two things that make the game interesting for me. Is the stopping, like should we stop or should I risk it? And that also depends by looking at your opponents and seeing how many cards they have. The other thing that makes the game interesting are the chips. So we've got the 1 point chip and the 10-point chip. Yeah. And if you manage to play all your cards, you can get rid of a chip, and you can get rid of the 10-point chip, right? From one play, you can just go from a losing position to a winning position, right?
So if you've got 9 points and you go out, you're just getting rid of 1 point. You're just going down to 8 points, right? If you've got 10 points and you go out, all of a sudden you're on 0 points, and points are bad in this game.
Second edition of this game is the Llama Party edition.
Yeah, one thing you didn't mention about one of the reasons you love this game is the theme, because of the llamas. Obviously, it's so well integrated into the game. I don't really know, but yeah, the Llama Party edition includes not just llamas, but includes a pink party llama, which just makes it that much more thematic. There's also a dice game, I think. I've not played the dice game, but...
Yeah, so I've played the dice game, and that's actually kind of different than the card game, of course. Like you don't have cards on your hand. You don't hold the cards, so the cards are open on the table, so everyone knows what cards you've got. And there you roll dice, and you get rid of the cards based on the outcome of the dice. It makes it easier to get rid of these chips, because if you roll 3 llamas, then you can get rid of a chip.
Okay. It's interesting that we talked at the beginning about Knizia being a mathematician, but he gave a talk at the UK Games Expo maybe 10 years ago that somebody I know went to, and talked a bit about how he does use his mathematics in his games, but if the game becomes, in his words, sort of too mathematical and doesn't have that randomness or luck element, then it starts to fail to be a game. It starts to be more of an activity, and so there's perhaps an interesting dichotomy there between the maths in the game and how to inject the right amount of luck that puts some people off his games. I think you can get unlucky in some of the games, especially the push your luck games, and some people find that quite frustrating.
Yes, I agree. I mean, some randomness, I think it's good in the game, so
Absolutely.
to keep the excitement going. Right, so another dice game. So we talk about push your luck is very easy to achieve with dice games, I think. Mm-hmm. And so another new dice game that was mentioned in this, it was reviewed in this channel, is Galactics, which we've got over here. So here again, you roll dice, and there are 5 different colors, 5 different tracks, let's say, that, and depending on the outcome of the dice, then you move forward. But some places on the track are black holes, so you don't want to land there, because then you lose your ship. And so here the game is about like choosing which track to advance. The first stage of the game is winning certain points, and so you want to go high, not on all tracks, so you want to focus on certain tracks.
Okay, and quite a recent game, this one, I think, isn't it?
Right, yeah, so that's a very recent game. And another recent game that I believe is related to this is Mlem, also a push your luck game. And that is a multiplayer game, while Galactics is a solo game. So in Mlem, so you've got each player places an astronaut on a spaceship, and the person who is in the front position in the queue is the captain of the ship. And so they roll the dice, and they have to they choose a number, and they advance the ship that many spaces depending on what was rolled on that dice. The tricky part is that you are only allowed to use certain numbers depending on the position where you are. You have the opportunity before the next roll to disembark the spaceship, and you end up either on a planet or on a moon, so they score differently. Clever thing about the game is that you've got, each has like 6 or 8 astronauts, I don't remember exactly, and each astronaut has, which is actually a cat-astronaut, okay, has a special power.
I look forward to playing it in 15 years' time when it's on the secondary market and I can trade something else for it. So
yes.
Okay, so Simpsons Slam Dunk, To Dunk or Not To Dunk, was originally called It's Mine. I did have a version of It's Mine, but it has the worst art of just about any game, I think. Whereas this has got pictures of Homer Simpson and the rest of the Simpsons on it. It's a very simple game. The person who's auctioning in inverted commas, is literally just turning over cards one after another until somebody slams their hand down on top of the cards and shouts, "It's mine." Hence the name. Some of the cards are negative scores, some are positive scores, some of them only score if you get a pair of the cards. So another game where it takes less than a minute to explain the rules, and then you need to spend a couple of minutes explaining the scoring. But very quick, fun party game, and very pure push your luck in that everybody's just sat there thinking, well, I need to slam my hand down when I'm too late. So yeah, a lot of fun. Very quick game, kind of reverse auction, kind of push your luck.
Yes, I would like to talk about High Score, which is another like push your luck game with dice in the sense that you want to decide whether you want to reroll or you want to stop and get the points. So essentially this game is you've got some card that gives you how explains you how the dice scores or like how you get points, and you try to get the most points in order to get a single point. So essentially it's like it's a race essentially. So you want to be furthest in the track. The game allows you different types of rerolls, so you can reroll part of your dice like a Yahtzee style, or you have to reroll all your dice. So the rules change each time. So yeah, another push your luck game with dice is Escape, and recently also called Rapido. That's also like a cool type of game. So where you have like strange looking dice again. So both dice have the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Both dice have the X as well. And then there is a die with a 4 and a 6. This is a race game. So you try to get on a track. So the first person who gets to 21, I think, is the winner. And the way that works is you roll your die again, and then you decide whether you want to stop or keep rolling. So you're allowed to reroll as many times as you want. And if you roll double, then you move ahead on the track. But if you roll X's, then you're bust, and so you don't make any progress. But the other interesting thing in this game is that so you can combine the two dice values as into a 2-digit number. So if you roll like a 2 and a 6, let's say, then you get the number 62. So the highest number goes first.
Okay.
And then you put the dice, let's say, on another track, which essentially like you're bidding how many steps you want to move forward until the start of your next turn.
It was an older game. You said it was called Escape, wasn't it? But it's very hard to get.
I actually like the game Escape than Rapido.
I'm going to talk about Picamino, although the version I've got is a German version. It's called Heckmeck Brakvermeck. It goes from 2 to 7 players. You've got 8 dice. The theme, speaks to me as it speaks to everybody, I think, because you're a chicken grilling worms, which is something we can all relate to. And you roll your dice, and there's some interesting decisions to make. You've got 8 dice. They go from 1 to 5, and then instead of a 6, there's a little worm on the 6 side, because Knizia doesn't produce games with a 6 on the dice, does he? They have to have something else on them. So this one's got worms on the 6 side. When you roll your dice, then you've got to keep one of the numbers to score. So you keep one of the numbers to score, and you roll the rest of the dice again. And again, you've got to keep numbers, but a different number. So the more times you roll the dice, the less numbers you've got that you're able to keep to score. And you have to keep all of that number. So if you ever roll the dice and you can't keep any of them, so let's say you've already stored some 3s and some 4s, and then you roll all 3s and 4s, then you've pushed your luck too far, you don't score anything, and you have to put some of your worms back on the grill, where presumably they'll be overcooked and somebody else will grab them. So yeah, nice push your luck. A handful of dice to roll, which is always good. A similar mechanism used in Age of War and Battleship Express, which I think those two are actually the same game with a different theme. That sort of push your luck of rolling a load of dice and deciding what to keep. And if you don't keep any worms, which kind of ties back to the sort of, if you don't have anything of something, then you're out. If you don't roll any worms and keep them on your go, then it doesn't matter how much you've scored, you're not going to get anything.
So the next major category we want to talk about is card games. And I think Reiner Knizia is a specialist in clever card games. I would say that one of his most well-known and probably the pinnacle of his card games is Lost Cities.
Absolutely, yep. Which gets talked about a lot as the couples game I see on Board Game Geek, which it's I don't know why it's called a couples game. It's just a really good 2-player.
I can testify to that.
So in Lost Cities, again, just really simple rules. You're going to be playing a card, drawing a card. You're going to be starting expeditions, and you're playing your cards in sequence to those expeditions. But as soon as you start an expedition, you start with minus 20 points when you start it. So then you've got to be thinking about, again, that sort of poker-like thing of, well, do I want to be in all of these expeditions? Probably not. I need to pick and choose which one I'm in. But it's also got that beautiful dynamic of you don't really want to throw anything away at some point. You've got really good high cards that you're going to be using later on in your expeditions, so you don't want to give those away or discard them. But you've also got some low cards that you're not going to go into, But you don't want the other person to be able to start those expeditions, especially since you can start the expeditions with some multipliers. So you can choose to double or triple or even quadruple the points in that expedition. So there's a lot of clever play in terms of what you want to discard. So simple rules, but interesting decisions.
Well, I would say agonizing decisions, right? I mean, at some point you have to give your opponent something because you kind of like you want to keep all the cards essentially, right? You have to give them something, and
yeah, it's a theme or a dynamic he explored quite a bit. It might even have won. Did one version of this win the Spiel des Jahres? Maybe a Celtis.
Is the Celtis is the one that won?
Yeah. So there's travel versions, Celtis and Lost Cities.
There's a
same dynamic
as well.
Okay, good. There's Lost City, The Rivals. Celtis has a board game as well as a card game. Lost Cities, I think, has a board game. So yeah, so you've got lots of different options in terms of which version to pick up. But I think I really like the Lost Cities, and the artwork's quite nice as well. The one card in the expedition tells a story leading through to the 10 card, which is very nice. The newest version, if you pick it up, has got an extra deck in it. I think a purple deck or an extra suit. Which I've never played with, but
no, I have the old edition, and I think 5 is a good number.
A really, really nice game. So yeah, Lost Cities, Celtis, the card game, is a very similar game in a little deck box, but with that same mechanism of laying your cards to build up your different suits, but also your discards go on separate piles, and your opponent is able to pick those up and use them. So yeah, just a great family of games. I think Lost Cities is the classic in there, but all the ones I've played have been interesting. I think. The next one on the list is The Quest for El Dorado. I've played the Golden Temples version of this. That's the version I've got, which is very similar. Deck building, I think, had been out for a long time before Knizia did anything himself with it. So there's deck building in this, but by the time it came out, there were loads of deck building games available. But this is a very nice deck building game with a market of cards that you can buy to go, and you use your cards in your deck to move along a map through different terrains. Certainly the Golden Temples is a race game to go out and get back to the start again with a variable map that you set up. A lot of fun, fairly simple deck building game, but uses it just really nicely as part of a fun race game.
Yes, I don't normally play deck building games myself. In fact, I only own The Quest for El Dorado, the original game.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Like, it's intuitive, I would say. You see the map, you can see like what's ahead of you, so you know which cards you need, certain cards. So it's not about creating the combos that normally you create with deck building games, but it's a different way that the game plays. So yeah, and I enjoy that way.
Yes, yeah. Perhaps one of the most innovative things in terms of deck building was in the market when a certain card sells out and isn't available in the market, the person who's next to buy a card, I think, or maybe the person who bought the last card.
No, the next person.
The next person gets to choose which card becomes available in the market. So there's a whole load of different cards available, but you get to decide which card is in the limited selection of cards available to buy. So I quite like that part of it.
Yeah, that's actually a nice thing because it limits your options, so you don't need to spend too much time thinking or strategizing which card to buy. It's again similar to Lost Cities. I mean, in some ways, in the sense that you play a card, you get a card. Is Cariba, not very well known, but like Lost Cities, you've got you play cards on different colors. So here there are like 8 different colors, let's say, or different suits where you play cards. This is actually one of the few games. Maybe there is a theme.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So nice. The theme is that you've got the animals, and there are the weakest animal, which is the mouse. And then there is the strongest animal, which is the elephant. And that's the 8 different suits. Okay. There is a mouse, then there is another animal, and so on. So the biggest animal can scare away the smaller animal. And the board is a lake, and that's where the animals arrive. So the way this game works is that you've got a number of cards in your hand, and you can play as many cards as you want of one suit. And if you manage to play the cards and you play all on the same track on the board, and if you end up with 3 or more cards of that suit, then you get points. And you get the points. So essentially, the theme is that the animals that you played scare away the next weakest animal from the board. So you take those cards as points. Quick game, small box, and interesting place. Different game we want to talk about is Art Robbery. That also probably has like a theme. Maybe
I think
Knizia has,
yeah.
maybe Reiner Knizia has put all his theme thought process into card games.
Okay, could be, yeah.
Could be. Yeah, so Art Robbery, so you and your opponents have actually stolen some loot, and you want to divide the loot. And you've got certain chips on the table, which represents different values of the loot. And some chips have a white dot on them, and that corresponds to the alibi. The game has one of the another common mechanism that Reiner Knizia uses, which is the auto-lose mechanism.
Okay.
So in the end of the game, the player or players with the fewest alibis are automatically out of the game. And so the remaining players count their loot, and the one with the most loot is the winner. The way the game plays is that you've got some cards in your hand. So you play a card, you get a card again, like his other games that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And when you play a card, so the cards have the different values. So you play the card with the value, and then you get that chip. But you might, if that chip is not on the table because an opponent took that chip, then you steal it from them. So the game is pretty quick. So players keep playing cards, taking chips from each other. So yeah, it's pretty fun, pretty fast, cool game.
I think it's an example of, I think he does quite a few games that are deceptive really in terms of very quick, very simple to explain, but if you use them as fillers on game night with, you've played Barrage and Underwater Cities and you've ploughed through all these games, and then you play a little game like this because you've got 15 minutes, people start off thinking it's a children's game or there's nothing to it, and once you start playing you realize, okay, there's interesting decisions going on here, there's things going on around the table, and there's interaction that you don't really realize perhaps on a read through of the rules or when you hear somebody explain it, because it really is a couple of minutes to explain.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the things that I really like about his games. Are we going on to Blue Moon now?
Right. So
let's go on to Blue Moon. Yes. In a minute,
Yes.
through a bit of magical trickery, Blue Moon is going to appear on my lap, I'm sure. But Blue Moon is a 2-player card game, a battling card game that's got basically 2 suits, fire and earth. And you pick a fight in one of those, and the interesting dynamic is when to pull out of that fight. Okay, and as if by magic, here's the box of Blue Moon, which didn't come in this box. I had to make a box for it because it came originally as a 2-player game with 2 decks, and then each deck came in its own little deck box. So it got expanded as you went along. It's one of my top 10 games because it's got that push your luck or knowing when to pull out of a battle. That's really one of the major decisions here. Is you're in a battle in the fire suit, let's say, and all the cards have got some points for fire, but you've got to decide, when do I say I'm going to pull out? If you stay in a fight for too long, then rather than losing a point, and the points are little plastic dragons, rather than losing 1 point, you'll lose 2 points if you're in a bigger battle and pull out a little bit too late. And the other thing that I think is a hallmark of Knizia games, I don't know what the team is like behind him or in terms of play testing, but I get the feeling that the games are really play tested well and are really looked at deeply before they're released. So there's a number of different decks here. The cards are beautiful tarot cards with art that's a little bit old and cheesy now, which is fine for me because I'm old and cheesy, but it's not so popular now as it used to be. But each deck plays differently. So you pick a deck up and it'll be different to a deck that you've used before. There is some sort of mechanism for constructing different decks, so you can mix the cards together. I've never done that. I just like these pre-made decks that you can quickly get out and know that you'll have a completely different feel to the game than you had before. And investigating the different decks and playing with them is really what's one of the interesting things about this game. The whole thing got reprinted with slightly smaller cards as Blue Moon Legends because it was out of print and hard to get. I think Blue Moon Legends is also out of print and hard to get at the moment. I'm sure it'll be on Kickstarter at some point in the next 15 years. A really nice two-player battling card game. I've got a card game here called Marvel Heroes Yo. It's the least favourite of Knizia's games that I've played. I didn't even know it was a Knizia game when I played it, and I'm not sure why it's my least favourite. It's small, it's got the scoring on the box, it's very nice from that point of view. It's kind of a mixture between Liar's Dice and Cockroach Poker. I really like Liar's Dice, it's in my top 10. I really like Cockroach Poker, so I don't really know why I bounced off of this so much. Maybe I need to just try it a little bit more.
Maybe it's the name. Yo.
Yeah, yo, that's what you're supposed to shout. If it's so you have some cards that you play across to people, and yeah, you bid, I'm giving you 3 blues. If they don't believe you, then they shout yo, and it's got pictures of Marvel heroes on the card. Not recommended as part of an official Game Court recommendation. Okay, the next game that I've got on the list is Modern Art, the card game. So we've already talked about modern art. One of the things that Knizia does, I think, is revisit games, but also I think one of the reasons I like his game so much is I get the feeling that he does a lot of editing. He takes things out and takes things out until what's left is the core of the game. And for me, that's a great way of making sure that the game is not overproduced and full of things that bloat the game. So this is Modern Art, which, if you remember, was the game that had all sorts of auctions in it, one time round, closed fist auctions, all sorts of things. This is Modern Art without the auctions, which sounds crazy, sounds like it wouldn't work at all, but it does work because the scoring in Modern Art is so interesting. This idea that the more cards you have on display, the more popular the artist is, and only the most popular artists will score in this round. This has similarly beautiful art to the new version of Modern Art that we showed earlier. Really nice, but again I preferred the older ones with the quite rubbish art, to be frank. I don't know who the artist was in the old editions, but I think it was a lot of clip art and stuff. But my favourite is the duck version here. I'll show a few of the cards. Hopefully they won't be the ones that get Walt Disney's lawyers onto the Game Court, but they're all different versions of duck themed antiquities. You'll have to zoom in quite a lot to see that mummy that's got a duck's face. Really silly art, but a really nice card game. Really simple, on your go. You play a card, the next person has their go. The next game, in fact the last game I think on the card list, is Battle Line, or I've sort of bundled Battle Line and Shot and Totten. Shot and Totten came out first, and then Battle Line, I think, instead of going from 1 to 9, the suits go from 1 to 10. And it includes a couple of tactics cards, which I can enjoy or not enjoy. Look at that box, it's only got half full of components. You could fit Shot and Totten in there as well. You've got 9 territories that you're attacking, and you play poker hands, 3-card poker hands. You play a card at a time, so again it's got that simple play a card, draw a card mechanic, similar to Lost Cities. Again, you've got to decide where you're going to battle, a bit like Lost Cities, but this time you're trying to play poker hands, so a flush will also work rather than just a run of cards. Works really well as a 2-player game. There's a few different versions of it, of Battle Line, and like I say, Shot and Totten is really a very similar game, although it's published under a different artwork. The one we've got here, that my assistant is displaying for you here, is Shot and Totten 2, which takes the same art as the recent Shot and Totten version, but gives you asymmetric powers on your turn. So the same sort of thing is happening, but each territory has got a little tweak to it, and you also get, one of you is again theme, you're attacking the castle, one of you is the chicken attacking the castle, and one of you is the cook defending the castle, because that's how sieges work, apparently. But again, on your go, playing a card, deciding where you're going to battle, because in battle line, you can win by having the majority of territories, or if you win 3 territories in a group, 3 consecutive territories, then you can also win. So there's some good decisions there about keeping your powder dry in some parts of the playing area and concentrating somewhere else. And a similar thing in Shot and Totten, you've got the territories lined up, but if you win a territory twice, then you win the game. So there's some nice, interesting decisions to be made in both of these. And I think one of the nice things about Knizia card games is that they're normally pretty good in terms of budget to buy, right? I mean, by definition, there's some cards in a deck the publishers can't stick too high a price tag on it, so it's a good way to get into some really nice, interesting games. Okay, we've got a couple more games to talk about that don't necessarily fit into the different categories, or were just missed off the other categories. I've got one, when we're talking about theme, I thought this one was worth picking up just because of the theme. It's the Great Wall of China, or that's how it was first published, and then it was republished with these people lining up trying to buy, I don't know if you can see there, toilet rolls that they're lining up to, and various luxury goods like that. It's called Pantu Ni Stau.
That's right.
Thank you. And yes, this was one that I bought during the pandemic, because during the pandemic we also had to queue up to buy toilet rolls. So, and the Great Wall of China is one of Knizia's lesser games. It might be maybe number 384 out of 700, perhaps. But yeah, I really liked the theme of this, and holds many happy memories of being locked down and not being able to do anything during the pandemic.
Except playing games.
Except playing games, yeah. It was a good time for board games, I suppose, wasn't it? So, yeah, there's actually 3 games in the series, which at least one of the others is a retheme of Money, which is another older Knizia game that's been rethemed to used car salesmen in Eastern Europe. And there's a 3rd one in the series as well. So, yeah, I think Great Wall thematically didn't really work, and then all of a sudden this has a different theme, and I think it works really nicely as a theme. It's entertaining and different, and I think that's probably what you want from a theme, something a bit different. I have Quo Vadis in a little box because it was made by Amigo. I think you have Quo Vadis in a bigger box.
Handsome Gluck.
Okay, yeah. But both Quo Vadis has been redone now as Zoo Vadis. So this one, again, thematically, this is a negotiation game, but it's got some limitations on the negotiations. It's been done quite well again by Knizia, so that you've got interesting decisions to be made on your go. You can't progress through the Senate without somebody else's agreement. And it's also got that auto lose mechanism, because if you don't get to the top of the Senate, then you're not in the running to win the game. This game has been redone recently as Zoo Vadis. This is set in the Senate in Rome. The new one has got animals instead of old Romans, and is in a box, again, a lot bigger than this, but a very similar game and good in terms of negotiation. Player-wise, I don't know. It goes up to 5, and I've only ever played it with 5 players. Do you need an odd number of players to play Quo Vadis? I don't know.
No.
It works okay?
Yeah, I would say so. One thing I can say about this game is it's a negotiation game, but of course you don't need to keep the agreement if it's in a later round, right? But of course you want to keep the agreement, the deal that you make in a later round, because otherwise no one else is going to make a deal with you, right? So it makes interesting negotiation strategies. Yeah.
Okay. Finally, we've got another couple of 100 games to talk about.
Pages.
Yeah, because Knizia's written a few books. This one's the dice game book. There's another one called Blazing Aces, which is a card game book, and there may be others. But this really is a budget way to introduce yourself to a whole load of games. For this one, all you need is some dice, and then you've got hundreds and hundreds of games. I believe Werfel Poker is in here, maybe as Poker Hunt. That might be my favourite in there, but there's dozens and dozens of games that you can try with some dice. And if you've got a pack or two of cards and you've got a copy of Blazing Aces, then again, there's dozens and dozens of games that you can try there.
Okay, so shall we wrap it up then?
I think people have been pretty patient. We haven't covered all 700 games, but you think that's enough now?
Well, maybe, yeah. The rest at different time, I think.
Okay.
Yeah?
How about your favourite 3 Knizia games?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. So I'll say my third favorite is Ra for the auctions. I like how the auctions are implemented in that game.
Excellent. Yep. I'll put, I think Taj Mahal in my number 3 spot. It's got that sort of poker play of whether to play in particular hands or not. And it's got some interesting set collection and some hand management there that I really enjoy.
Okay. My second favorite is Tigris and Euphrates. And I like the strategies that you can play with you can make your own strategies with the tiles placement.
Excellent. I think my number 2 would be Blue Moon. It's a 2-player card game, and there's loads of good 2-player card games. And there's loads of good 2-player card games by Knizia. This one I've played a lot and got to know some of the different decks, and I just find it's got a lot of depth to it, a lot of replayability.
Okay, my favorite Knizia game is Amun-Re because of the different strategies you can play, like different phases, like you've got 4 different phases, and management of money. It has some economic feel, like developing the area, like where to invest, and I like that.
My number 1 would be Tigris and Euphrates. So your number 2, it's an incredibly popular game. Given how popular it is, it was number 1 on Board Game Geek for a while. Why it's not in print is a mystery to me, but that's my favourite Knizia game and one of my favourite games of all time.
Great choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. We hope you enjoyed the video. Come back for more.
Goodbye for now. Bye-bye.